Thank you all for being here today. Um, I'm Charles Turner, and I'm a board member here at the Center for Global Management. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I really appreciate you all spending some time to get to participate in our session. And we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of ground to cover. Fantastic group. Um, we've I'm going to share my screen in just a second and walk you through a little bit about the center and talk a little about the uh, we talk a little bit about the what is all about the Center for Global Management, what's happening with our expat series, and then introduce our guests because we have some great alumni, have a great experience in being expats. I see a lot of faculty as well and staff, so thank you for spending some time here joining us, other board members, a lot of alumni. And we have a big mix of attendees here. We're going to spend some time chatting and asking our guests some questions. And then at the end, we'll have some time to go and do some Q&A and give you a chance to ask them direct questions. They'll facilitate that as well. So appreciate you. And the way you can ask questions is you can basically just raise your hand at the end. So you don't need to use chat features. You don't need to do any of that. But please hold your questions, bring them to us at the end, and we'll be able to field all those questions with it. Okay, so just a little bit about the center. As you all have been participants of the Center of Global Management, you understand UCLA Anderson is a global institution. It works around the world. But we try to ensure that the next generation of leaders see business and society through a global lens, become responsible world leaders and well-rounded global citizens. And this expat series is to help complement that. We want to link alumni with students and share their global insights and experience. And by linking them, we like to bring them to the campus. In this case, we're bringing them virtually to you. We want to engage our global alumni, let them share their experiences and insights with you directly, and get their perspectives on short-term and long-term assignments and how those work. We have a large network of alumni, international alumni as well, over 4,000, 27 international chapters. So reach out if for those are international participants. So if you think more broadly, though, there's over 800 million people around the world who are actively looking for jobs abroad. So that's a substantial number of people very interested in looking at global opportunities. People are looking at this for a variety of reasons, but some of those top reasons, as you would expect, are financial and economic. They're also looking, though, for career opportunities and better overall quality of life. And some of the main reasons people don't pursue these is the inability to bring family members or life partners. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Some of those challenges about families globally. Both of our session guests have families and have been expats overseas with their families. And some of the top countries that people have been pursuing around the world, predominantly English-speaking countries, Australia, US, Canada, top lately. But a lot of Asian countries have been growing in demand. Japan and Singapore are on this list, and we'll talk a lot about them today. And this is a set of cities that have been targets for the respondents where they were looking, Singapore being on this list. We also have Tokyo and LA is one of those lists. So you're in the right places, large cities, people are very interested in. And then more recently, with the U.S. economy being what it is, the situation domestically has been challenging for some time. But we're seeing a greater interest in overseas assignments. And last month, Wall Street Journal had an article titled "More Middle Income Americans Are Trying to Make a New Life Overseas." And as you can see in this chart on the right, substantial growth the last 15 years of number of people moving overseas. And Asia is one of those fastest growing areas. And we're just seeing that across the board, more interest in this space. So we appreciate you coming here to listen about it because it's a timely topic. And we think you can get a lot of value out of this session. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I want to spend a little time introducing our guests, getting to know them, and start diving into the topic of being an expat. So with that, let me just do a quick introduction and let them introduce themselves. Joe, our first guest, Joe Duronio is a class of 15, and then Ann Gallon is a class of 2016. And they've been active with Anderson ongoingly. We're delighted to have them be part of our session today. So let me just dive right in and start asking some questions. So Ann, Joe, could you each share about where you were raised, a little bit about your journey leading up to pursuing your MBA here at UCLA Anderson?
Joe, go, please proceed.
Sure, sure. So I'm Joe Duronio. I was born in Pittsburgh. I grew up in New Jersey and went to college in New York City. I started my career as a lawyer at AIG. I spent almost 15 years there. They moved me out to LA, where I attended the UCLA program part-time. After that, I pushed personally to move my family to Asia, as my wife is from Japan and my children all speak Japanese. So I was able to move out here with AIG. I've been in Singapore for almost 6 years. Since coming out to Singapore right before COVID, I've changed jobs a few times. I'm now in technology, and I work at a great company called Databricks, which is growing very fast and part of the data and AI trend globally. I manage partnerships with large consulting firms like Accenture, Deloitte, and EY across all of APJ out of the Singapore office. Today, I'm in Sydney, and I could see why it would be one of the top cities on the list there of places to go to. I'm in the Databricks office here in Sydney. So that's who I am. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. Always happy to speak to Bruins.
Yeah,
Ann?
great. Thanks, Joe. How about for you, Ann?
Great. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone on screen. And so I actually was born in Vietnam, spent early childhood in France, immigrated to the US, and spent the rest of my teenager and adult life in Southern California. And spent more than 2 decades in the automotive. I fell into the space by accident, was recruited in, thought I was going to stay for a few years, and ended up staying for this long. And joined Toyota, great company. I had a chance. My passion has always been an international. Granted, I've moved several countries and learned several languages. It's just part of who I am. So it was a natural fit to work with a global company like Toyota, and knew I always wanted to do an MBA, and decided that it was the right time after, being more in with experience under my belt and really going after more of what are some opportunities to learn. And the UCLA-NUS GEMBA program that was focused on Asia Pacific was just the perfect match for me. I wanted to learn more about Asia and really just understanding, especially working for a Japanese company. So joined the program, and and just met incredible people that we can also share a little bit later down this program. But so I'm here now, actually working as a senior director, actually, for strategy and program management, and I'm at the client site back to another Japanese company, and I'm based at Honda. So nice to meet everyone.
Great. Thanks, Ann. You've covered a lot of auto over this span of career. You know Japanese automobiles very well. So let me start with you, Ann. Can you tell us about how the opportunity to work in Asia came about?
So, I mentioned that my passion has always been in global. And so I signed up for the UCLA-NUS GEMBA program because of the focus that the program offered for Asia Pacific. And I want to say maybe 1.5 years, the program's 15 months, but halfway through, there was an opportunity at the time, being a global company. Toyota had a lot of expat roles available, and a lot of them are in Japan at headquarters in Toyota City, which is slightly outside of Nagoya. They also have, expat around the world in Europe, Latin America. But being that I was in the Asia Pacific program, I felt this is the right time, and the calling was there. And it came up. I talked to, a lot of the previous expat. I wanted to hear more about it before throwing my name in the hat, and talk to the leadership, not only in the US, but also tracking down some of the folks that were on the ground there in different roles to understand the culture, to understand, how things worked, and talking to other women in the program as well to understand that, and learning about it. it just made me realize that was the right thing for me. And after raising my hand that I was interested, I did some rounds of interview, and actually, I think it was a secret help that I was in the, UCLA GEMBA program, Asia Pacific, and they actually said that, wow, you're doing this program. And so I think having that conversation, multiple rounds of conversations, and doing the due diligence with expats and leadership, both in the US and in Japan, really helped me to secure the role. So that's kind of my journey to the expat role.
Great. Same question for you, Joe.
Yeah, so I've been married to my wife for 16 years. As of yesterday was our anniversary. And going to Asia was something that I really wanted to do. So I was at a large international corporation, AIG, which had offices all over the world. And I got some good advice from a mentor of mine. If you want to do something, tell people. So I started telling people pretty regularly that I wanted to move to Asia. And then every year I would take a trip for family purposes to Tokyo, and I would call up the senior ranking members of the AIG leadership in Tokyo and say, I'm in town for a week and I'd love to get a cup of coffee. And let me tell you, if you travel around the world and tell somebody you want 15 minutes of their time, they will often give it to you. So that's some advice I think is really helpful is going somewhere and meeting with those people. Um, it was difficult to try to get a role in Tokyo, so I expanded my desire to Singapore and Hong Kong. And one year when I was on a trip to Tokyo, I did 2 weeks, 1 week with family, another week visiting Singapore and Hong Kong. Fell in love with Singapore. It's a very easy place to start your journey in Asia because it's English speaking, and it's a huge business hub for all of APJ. It took me several years of advocating to make that move before I got it. And once I got to Singapore, COVID hit, and the company asked me to return to the United States, which I declined to do. So then I was in Asia and had to search for a new role and manage my visa, which was challenging, but I was able to get into a startup and then eventually into a large American company with overseas branches, which is now Databricks. So that's sort of my journey there. I will say UCLA helped a lot because I did do a program, an exchange with Waseda for a 2 week course in Tokyo. That was taught in English as well. My Japanese is pretty good for, casual situations, but not good for a boardroom situation. But it's important to be able to speak the language, even just to build relationships after work, which is an important part of the culture there.
That's great. Super fascinating journey. So I'm going to go back to you, Joe, and then we'll go back also to Anne after that. Can you describe some of the key obstacles you encountered as an expat and the strategies you used to overcome them?
Yeah. If your company has like a set program, it can be a lot easier to sign up for, an overseas assignment. If it doesn't, it can be more challenging. The roles can be rare. So you want to, really try to expand. At one point, when I was going to Asia and meeting with the AIG executives, I started meeting with recruiters and talking to other companies outside of AIG. So finding that role can be very difficult, especially if you're far from it. So again, I think one of the things is being there is important. So try to make that time. If you do one of the immersions, try to make some time to meet with people. Keep in touch with people. Remind them that you met them in person, or remind them that you're coming, that you want to meet with them. Expats overseas tend to lump together and help each other, which is a really good thing. So if you get to be part of that community, it can be very helpful in finding the next role. One of the challenges being an expat is if you don't have a job, is keeping your visa status. That can be very tricky. So finding a role very quickly can be a challenge as well. Yeah, I think understanding what's required of you to remain in a country is really important.
Okay. How about for you, Anne?
Anne?
So I would say, I'm going to share maybe two obstacles that came top of mind when I was in Japan for 3 years. I've only been there previous to my expat assignment, just visiting as tourist. And so the first obstacle that I faced was more being, number one, a foreigner. And number two, I am not fluent, nor will I pretend to be even conversational in Japanese. Granted, after a year, I did take some classes. But I think that first obstacle of being a foreigner and not speaking Japanese made it challenging, even though Toyota Financial Services, which is the financial side of Toyota, is a global company. The office I was based in, it's the headquarters, it had 100 people. They all speak English. Whether or not they are comfortable or confident to speak, that's another thing. But when you don't speak the language and you're a foreigner going in, most meetings were actually all the meetings were conducted in English. That was one of the global requirement that Mr. Toyota and the senior leadership asked of Toyota employees, the close to 400,000 employees worldwide, that meetings would be held in English. So that helped a lot. And it also helped that the role that I was going into was fairly a upper management, but it was also externally facing, meaning external to Japan. So even though it was a headquarter, my role was interacting with all the other executives from around the world. So we had 40 offices around the world, and that was kind of that role. So my interactions with the local team was if we had a decision to make, if we had some actions we had to take. And I would say that the strategy I used to kind of overcome my language barrier was really to bring that team, because they speak English, bring my small team with me to the meeting, and not to the main meeting, but to actually have pre-meeting. So I know it sounds, redundant, but you want to have a few of these, they call it nemawashi meetings, to have pre-meetings to discuss what you're going to talk about at the main meeting. And sometimes you need 2 or 3 before the big meeting. And the best part is by the time you get to the main meeting, everybody's seen the content, they've probably agreed, and it's a smooth sailing. But that helps with the language barrier. It helps taking down that fear that, hey, I didn't understand what you were presenting. So you go slowly and you do it informally. So that helped a lot to get that group that comes with you and kind of helps to translate if need be. But for the most part, these pre-meetings I felt helped a lot. The second one, aside from being a foreigner in the language, I want to say is the overall work culture of, working for a Japanese company. Granted, it is a global company. It has unique challenges, right? There are a lot of exciting where you're learning moments, but you would have meetings and sometimes you would turn around and you're like, well, you just had a meeting, but there's now another meeting and it's with just locals all in Japanese, right? But it's because you realize at first it's like, wait, did I miss something? Am I excluded? It's actually no. They actually walk away from the main English meeting and they have smaller meetings to try to figure out in Japanese, are there things they're missing, or do they understand everything? And then through those, they actually come back. So I learned that it's just part of how they process and, break down, what was discussed and kind of make sure they come back to you. I want to make sure I cover also in the office, what I learned that helped a lot to kind of overcome this work culture was I looked for people who have worked overseas. A lot of the folks in the office, again, it's not a very big office, they've done expat assignments overseas in other countries. And so they understand what it means to be outside and to come back, right? They face similar challenges, and to gain insights from them, to learn from them, and also to hear, what are some of their challenges and how they've overcome. So learning from the locals that went expat helped a lot. So I would say those are my 2 strategies and obstacles.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So you both have navigated your expat journeys with not just by yourselves, but with your family members in tow. And can you share a little bit more about how bringing your spouse or being a spouse and a parent in another country presents new opportunities for your family? And then what were some of those challenges that you need to overcome in order to optimize that? Who'd like to go first?
Sure, I'll jump in. So I've got a wife and 3 children. Their ages are 13, 12, and 9, 2 girls and a boy. We've been in Singapore for 6 years, so they came over when they were quite a bit younger. First thing I'll say is this hasn't been a challenge for me. I've been very fortunate, but I've seen it happen to many other expats, is if your family is not on board with the assignment, that is the number one thing that will make your assignment very short. The average lifespan for an expat in Singapore is 3 years. That means I've been there 6. Somebody's been there 6 months. and had to go back. And typically that's because your partner is unhappy. So just make sure, I think that's the first thing. So I'm fortunate that my wife's quite international, speaks English well, speaks Japanese, and is comfortable in Singapore. The other thing I'll say is think a lot about schooling for your children. International schools in Singapore are amazing, but they are $60,000 a year per child. That's like going to UCLA every year for 12 years, right? That can really wreck you if you don't have expat level support from your company. Some companies will pay for education. That is declining. It still exists in oil and gas, but in tech, rarely will they do that for you anymore. So one option we had was to put our kids in the local school, which I will tell you is very rigorous. And for our children, involves an hour of Chinese study every day, and learning the Chinese characters does not come without tears. So it's a very difficult language to grapple with, especially if it's not your native tongue at an early age. It's a lot of memorization. That said, Singapore school system is one of the top in the world, and the local system is more affordable. So those are some of the things to think about: the costs and the cultural differences of raising children in another country. Anne, your thoughts?
So I'm going to give you from the corporate side, considering I was, sent over. So from that standpoint, part of the package is that you get international school for your children and then language classes. So I think the kids, my kids were at the time 5 and 10. And they both were enrolled in international school in Nagoya. So it's only maybe 20 minutes away from Toyota City. So we decided to live in Nagoya. And I want to say also, it's probably maybe the 4th largest city in Japan. So English is not going to be as predominantly regular like in Tokyo or Kyoto or Osaka. And so being in that environment where you're bringing your family, I think, Joe, you mentioned it, their support and buy-in on this whole journey is key. And from when I accepted the expat assignment, my husband had a full-time job that he actually quit and came along on the journey. And he actually had joined the UCLA NUS program. So that was a good timing. And in some sense, having that support, him being on the ground, made a huge difference. After he did find a role there, and it happened to be in Yokohama. So that didn't help, because then I ended up being a full-time working mom and single. So that was challenging, and I could share that in a bit as well. But from opportunities, learning the language, meeting students, it's very international. I mean, being in an international school, they get to meet so many different groups of kids, and working as an expat and then bringing your kids in this environment, you're also meeting a lot of families in different companies. So it's a chance to really expand your network and just learning from everybody who's gone through this journey. So I thought that was a huge opportunity for the entire family.
That's fantastic. So, and want to keep you going. So you had a unique experience, not only being an expat, but you're bringing in an experience as an American woman working for a Japanese company in Japan. Do you have any advice or suggestions for women thinking about pursuing a corporate career in Japan or Asia?
Gee, Charles, how long do you have? So, I think there are so many things that are so critical to picking the country that you're going to go to expat. So for the sake, from my experience, I was, picked to go to Japan. And number one, I think with that, there are not a lot of women that are going into an expat role. It's usually men. And that's what I discovered. So that pool is already very, very small. I think that, that's something to be mindful. If you're going to decide to go do an expat assignment to Japan or to Asia or somewhere else, I would say for me, some of the things that really come top to mind that I would share as nuggets is look carefully to understand if it is a corporate expat assignment, it's talk to the leadership team that is responsible for the expat, but also talk to the local team. Meaning, if you are going to Japan, for example, I spoke to the leadership team. I spoke to other expat that rotated through this assignment to understand, the mindset of the teams that they were working with and really asking them question. For me, it was very important. How open are they? Their mindset. Are they open to new thinking, foreigners? It sounds weird to ask that question, and maybe not so PC, but you got to ask those questions. And to understand, I wanted to know, have there been women in the role? Have they been successful? Or what were some of the challenges they face? So that you have your facts. So those are some of the homework, and really diving into kind of understanding that from both sides, understanding the positives and the negative, and to know the leadership, the team that you're going to work with, the boss that you're going to be working with, who are they? And are you going to be set up for success? So that's going in. Once you're on the ground, so I'll make it two-part, right? The pre and then the during. When you get to the role, you have a short window. For my role, I was, chief of staff and strategy. And so I had a lot of interactions with senior management, but I also had to work with the overall team to kind of bring all that information together. So once you're on the ground, I want to say 30, 60, 90 days is building your credibility up, but also building rapport and credibility across the organization. Because number one, you have a local team. So there's always that sense, it's not in a negative way, but there's that sense, why do we need to bring somebody into this role? We could probably have somebody do this locally. And so what I think helped was building this credibility that you are the subject matter expert, that this is facing global and that you bring with it some unique skills. And that was kind of what I try to do early on. And then meeting the CEO on a regular basis. I think one of the other thing I would say personally that worked really well for me was a lot of people gave me advice. Okay, when you're, in Japan, when you're seeing the executives, you got to do the bow. You got to make sure, sounds almost like a king. You got to back out of the room. And there were certain things that was outside of my character. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it to be disrespectful. There was certain parts that they brought me as an American with that insight. I wanted to not completely be Japanese per se, because I'm not. So going in, I was very mindful to be respectful, to do the bow, but in some sense still have that personality of who I am. And I felt that over time, that in itself earned its own merit and respect. So I don't know if I'm articulating it right, but like I said, I would try to say as much in Japanese, but I didn't kid around. I couldn't speak Japanese, but I'll try to say as much, the thank you and the excuse me. But everything else was, the way that I felt was the right level. So hopefully that helps.
If I can just add, I think I totally
Yeah,
agree with
please.
everything Anne said. Japan is slowly getting better, right? There is a new Japanese prime minister started this last month.
Yeah.
There is some progress being made, but it is still quite behind. And I still feel uncomfortable that, when you go out for drinks and dinner, there's no women around at some of those meetings,
Mm-hmm.
which I still find uncomfortable and strange as an American. And then just to contrast, in Singapore has done very well and is much more gender balanced, with a lot of women who are very senior in the government. The new head of DBS, largest bank in Singapore, is a woman. And part of that may be because all men have to serve 2 years in the national service. So there's a little bit of more balance in that society. You will find this varies greatly in Asian societies, all across the board. But Japan is obviously one of the largest economies and definitely still has that challenge. And again, getting slightly better.
Great. Thank you both. I appreciate the perspectives. So maybe chat a little bit more about these styles and how it influences you as a leader. So can you speak more about, being in Singapore, being in Japan, being across Asia? How has that influenced your leadership style when you compare that to when you were based here in the US?
And do you want to start? Or
Go, Joe, please.
okay. Yeah, leadership style. I think I come from the United States, which we tend to believe is a very diverse country, and it is to an extent. But the level of diversity, especially in the role that I have, which covers all of Asia, is way more extensive. And So thinking about the different ways that people want to be approached, or the different ways, and spend a lot of time on the decision-making process in Japan, is very different. Um, and subtle things like you should know when it's Ramadan, right? You should not be chewing on a candy bar in the middle of the meeting. Not that you would do that anyway in the United States, but you have to be careful of these types of things, these subtle cues. So respecting a lot of different cultures is incredibly important. Um, and time zones. People from India will call me and I'm in Singapore and it is Friday at 8 p.m. The United States is atrocious for not respecting the times of Asian markets. So these things are challenges, and you have to be very, very attuned to these. If you're going to do a meeting across Asia, it's got to be right smack in the middle of the afternoon for Australia and Singapore, so that India can jump on very early. These are very tactical things, but they make a difference in how you're perceived and whether people want to do business with you or whether they see you as arrogant and not concerned with their culture. So those are some of the thoughts that I have on that. And I don't know, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about leadership in a different way.
Well, I think I went over for a 2 year assignment. I ended up staying three. And then when I came back, I stayed on a year remote to support the Japanese executive. And I want to say it's shaped a lot more since I came back how I go about looking at leadership. I look at it from the angle already spending time working with a Japanese company, and you've been taught about a culture of consensus, right? A culture of respect. So I feel like coming back, I've got all of that plus a lot more focus on empathy and really making sure no one loses face, but yet you try to kind of bring in, there's got to be that win-win. So to me, I want to say that my leadership style has always been around you got to build the trust and then the communication. And so after spending time in Japan, I tackle on there, wow, it's got to be about making sure that there's this good consensus understanding that people feel comfortable with the decisions you're making and how it's going to impact. So you're looking at the holistic view of how is this going to impact all the stakeholders. And when I talk about trust and communication, that's all you have because the language is a huge component. If there's one misunderstanding, that trust can go out. And with working with, such a diverse group, and communication is so different. Even in Japan, generationally, it's so different. So it's learning that. And I would say that to me, it's shaped how I've been, leading and how I look at mentoring as well.
Great answers. I love it. And maybe we'll ask one more question and then we'll go into some Q&As. So, if you reflect back on your time at UCLA Anderson, what were some of the most impactful lessons and experiences that have stayed with you throughout your entire career and through today?
Okay, you went first last time, Joe, so I'll take this one.
I love
I think some of the overall things from what I can say is accepting differences in diversity in thought and opinion is one of the big thing. Already through the program, we had, a cohort, maybe around 40 from different countries, different walks of life and experience. And already we were thrown into group projects and having to learn how to balance and just getting to understand different perspective to get the project to work as one. And when you take that into the corporate setting, it's pretty much the same. Sometimes you're put on a group to lead a group that you don't have any insight, you don't know who they are, but you have to figure out a way to work. And I think that piece of experience that we gain, along with, to me, the biggest piece was the communication, whether it's writing a presentation for the practicum or writing it for the board of director. I felt like that really helped us shape and prepare for what we were going to do in the boardroom. So the deadlines, the working with different backgrounds and getting everybody to try to at least agree to either disagree or agree to move forward and maybe not have 100% consensus, but 80%. I think that is so helpful and useful in the corporate side.
Yeah, I will just say, I had a tremendous amount of great experiences at UCLA. I was fortunate enough to be able to give the commencement speech on the year that I graduated. I got to meet Warren Buffett. But by far and away, the best part of it is the sort of the lifelong network and the diversity of that network. So when I did effectively my GAP program, I actually did BCO thanks to Dean Frasius, who gave me an exception to move into that. My best friend was a Chinese national, and my first trip to Shanghai, I told him I was going, and he connected me with a bunch of friends there. And every year, Gonzalo visits Singapore, and we still keep in touch. Same with Professor Kramer, who brings a series of students every year to Singapore, and I host them at the American Club. So it's sort of the lifelong network and the ability to go. I was in Sydney on the beach 2 days ago wearing a UCLA shirt, and somebody said "Go Bruins." So that's sort of the most amazing thing, is that it just keeps going on, and it's been a critical help to me here in Asia.
That's great to hear. I love to hear that the Go Bruins are being said all around the world. So maybe I do have time for one more question. So there are a lot of students here and alumni who are deep interest in working in Asia. Any other last pieces of advice you'd like to share with them, offer them, given your vast experience in Asia?
Yeah, I'll just mention a benefit of working in Asia, and Gonzalo will appreciate this as well. There's every year for taxes, there's a foreign earned income exclusion, which means the first 125, and they change the number every year, but the first 100K plus is not taxed at US rates. That means you're paying local rates. You do get somewhat double taxed after that, or you have to true up to the US rates. So you do get a benefit compared to Americans, but Canadians and Australians are doing even better because they're not paying their home country taxes at all. Go
I
ahead.
won't be giving tax advice, but I'll give the advice from the angle of if you're interested in working and you're in a corporate setting, I would say start with understanding what kind of expat program your company offers, what countries are the countries aligned to where you want to go, and then do a little bit more understanding of the cycle. How often are they rotating the expat, and are you in that time where they're about to go through a new batch of expat assignment? And then functional area, if you're looking to grow or you've had previous experience and they're going to be opening up an expat assignment, for example, in finance and planning, start talking to already your leadership team and then start tracking down the expat. That's kind of really they keep in touch. All the expats, they all keep in touch in the community. And most of them tend to be groomed to actually lead countries. In the cases of Toyota, most of the expats are asked to kind of then go on to, if they're interested in a specific country and that country is available with a leadership role, usually they get tapped to go to those countries. So really, I would say from the corporate track, start with already what expat assignments are available, who can you find to talk about the role, and really the biggest thing is raise your hand and really letting your leadership team and the folks in that country you're interested, and really to understand what are they looking for, what are the skill sets, and ultimately, if you can, the secret nugget is to find the leader, the managing director of that office in that country, and really trying to understand what is it that they need this expat to do? What's the objective? Is the agenda they're trying to accomplish? Usually it's maybe for transformation or to bring in innovative ideas. If you can find that, it helps you position yourself for that role.
Well, excellent advice. Thank you very much, Joe. And this has been a true treasure. I appreciate all the insights. I want to also share with the audience here that, the Center of Global Management does continue to expand this bridge. We've mentioned these global immersions, including Singapore and Japan, but many other nations. And Lucy's always available to reach out to her, learn more about these programs. I encourage all the students to get engaged. But alumni, you're also invited. You're able to partake in the global immersion programs as well. And we continue to offer lots of seminars and series through the Center of Global Management. So we encourage you all to continue to join us in creating more global citizens, connecting our alumni back here at the campus, And again, Joe, and thanks so much for spending some time with our students. And we're going to give us a little break here, and we'll go back to Q&A in just a second. Thank you so much, Joe and Ann.